Hello everyone. You've stumbled upon my channel. Welcome. My name is Baron, and this is my channel where I talk about books. I'm the Book Baron. Cool, good for me. Welcome. So I'm here to give you a little bit of a wrap up on everything that I read in July. I was able to get everything from my July TBR read because I put on your books, allowed me? Yeah, great English. I read a lot. I got everything read from my July TBR, and I was able to sneak in a few things that I wasn't able to get to from my June TBR, as well as some additional reads. So I got to about 13 or 14 books. A lot of them were new releases. So I'm just going to jump in. These are in no particular order. Oh God. Okay, if you really love Fourth Wing, I'm gonna kindly ask you to maybe click off this video if you don't want differing opinions on it. I'm gonna go on a tiny bit of a rant here. I don't mean to, it's just I'm really frustrated by this book. Before I get into that, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarrow. This book has been everywhere. It's the first in a new series. Rebecca Yarrow is written extensively in the romance genre, and this is her first fantasy novel. My weird casual lean is distressing. I don't like that. Essentially, the plot of this is Violet was supposed to be a scribe, and then sort of last minute her mother decides that she needs to be a dragon rider, and she's going to go to this dragon riding school where there's a lot of people that die, there's not enough dragons, and a lot of people don't like her because her mother is like a war captain with the dragon riders and has carried out some punishments against some like rebelling fractions. So she has to watch her back because of that. And Xaden is like enemy number one with her. Xaden doesn't like her because of those same reasons. And they're like, oh, stay away from him. But guess who she falls for? The plot is like enemies, lovers, war college, magical school fantasy romance situation with some dragon sermon, which all sound fine and dandy. I need your help with actually how you think I should rate this because I'm extremely conflicted. Want to say, I don't think this is a horrible book. And when I approached this book, I thought the romance is going to be well developed because she's been primarily a romance writer, and then the world building would maybe not as great, and that was something that I was going to have to be able to look past or to enjoy the book. The problem that I had with all of it was that it was way too long. We were constantly being given information about the world, and so much of it was given out of context because one of the quirks about Violet is that she just info dumps stuff when she's nervous. That's not a great tool when you're thinking about building a world. I'm not going to keep that in my head because I have no like network of information that this is being associated with. And we're in a fucking magical school. Like, let us learn that with her, or go to a lecture and be bored by like, oh my gosh, this is all common knowledge or something. That really bothered me. That aside, the plot was extremely generic. The twists in here, you've seen them before if you've read any fantasy romance. There's nothing new in here. The romance was really boring. It was literally them spending time together training, and there wasn't really anything outside of that. Like, I could not tell you why these two like each other other than it's forbidden, and I think they're horny dragons passed on their horny dragon feelings. Like, that's kind of the extent of it. And so it felt like that romance really came out of nowhere. And I think my biggest gripe is actually with the tone of this novel. So this felt like a very young YA fantasy that got spice thrown into it, and then it was called new adult or adult. Violet's internal monologue reminds me a lot of the main character from Savage Bond. It's very petulant. It's like, oh my god, what an asshole. It kind of comes across bratty. It's hard to feel like the school is dark when it's coming across like you're in high school. You know, like the high school drama of it. Someone's going through an obstacle course where they could die, and they're going into it and they're like, oh my god, girl, you're totally gonna crush it. That doesn't tonally make sense. Like, that doesn't make the world dark. Just because you kill someone off doesn't automatically make that world dark. And so I was so frustrated by all of it. I'm so sorry that this is really kind of turned into a rant. I don't want it to. I don't know how to rate this book because, again, I don't think it's inherently bad. I just don't understand the hype because this is not a unique book. And I haven't even been reading fantasy romance recently. I've read other fantasy romances that have a lot of these same elements that this book is getting praised for that do it better. So why the hell is this book getting so much fucking hype? I don't get it. I don't get it. Okay. I could go on and on about that. I'm gonna cut myself off because I don't want to come across awfully bitchy. I just really am frustrated by this book. All right, next up. Hi, so a little bit of a jump scare here. I was watching back the footage and I was serving corpse, I think is the best way to describe my energy. The rant from Fourth Wing kind of took it out of me. So I decided I'm gonna refilm the rest of this. So if my hair looks different, my makeup, I took a nap, I drank a coffee, and I'm back at it. Also, this is a good time to issue a correction. I realized I was mispronouncing Rebecca Yarrow's last name the entire time. I forgot the S in the end, so I'm just going to get into things. Most of the rest of these were just okay. Next up, we have Pirates Queen by Riley West. Essentially, we have our Queen Lucia. She's in a bit of a pickle. She either needs to marry her cousin or go to war. She doesn't like men. Her cousin's a dictator, so she doesn't want him to have access to her kingdom. So she's in a bind. Alessandra is a pirate queen. Her crew ends up kidnapping Lucia, and things go from there. They end up shipwrecked and having a spicy, spicy time of things. It's very light on the fantasy elements, has a little bit of a historical feel, sapphic pirate romance. I gave this book 3 stars. I just think it wasn't my speed. It was extremely spicy. These gals are very horny. So if that's something that you're looking for, if that drives with you, that's perfect. For me, it just kind of left everything else underdeveloped. The plot, the world, the characters, even the relationship. So 3 stars, moving on. Next up is Real Regrets by C.W. Farnsworth. This is the second book in the Kensington series, but these can be read as standalones. It's a billionaire accidentally married in Vegas book. In the first book, Oliver makes a pretty massive mistake, so he is trying to get back in his father's good graces. He's always done what he's told. He's very buttoned up. He's business minded. He's a bit of a workaholic. He's always doing the right thing. He goes to Vegas for a bachelor party. So Oliver and Hannah run into each other at the bar in their hotel. They hit it off pretty immediately. It's very clear that they have some good chemistry. And then they end up accidentally married. The problem that this poses for Oliver is his father wants him to get married in a business arrangement style marriage. So like an arranged marriage set up by him as a way to get back in his good graces. Because his father's not a forgive and forget type. He's very my way or the highway, and he's holding like CEO of the company and some other things over Oliver's head. So I give this 5 stars. I like how C.W. Farnsworth does her billionaire romances because both parties come from money, which I love. They were also very clearly very similar, where they are people pleasers. They're trying to do the quote unquote right thing or everything that's asked of them to the detriment of themselves. And really these two came together and learned how to stand up for themselves and ask for the things that they wanted. I also loved that in Vegas. All right, the audio got corrupted for this, but all I was saying is that they came up with a plan about how they were going to address the accidental marriage while they were still in Vegas, right when they woke up. A lot of the ones that I've read previously, they just see the piece of paper and then go, oh no, and try and run away, which I'm like, that doesn't make a ton of sense. So I love this. I love the character work. The miscommunication that happens in this, I thought made a lot of sense for the characters. They're used to like pushing away their feelings about something in order to like serve the family or to meet someone else's needs. I really liked how this book was done. 5 stars from me. Next up, Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. We have Dr. Brianna. She is up for a promotion, but she's got a lot going on in her personal life. Her brother needs a kidney transplant and her marriage just imploded and she's in the process of getting a divorce because her husband's a big fat cheater pants. We also have Jacob. He is joining the ER as a new doctor, but he's not getting along with the staff. He's very anxious, so he's kind of coming across a little off. And he also loses every single patient on his first day. So these two really get off on the wrong foot. And then on top of that, Brianna finds out that he's up for the same promotion. So she's like, it's on site. But they end up one day meeting in a closet when they both need a break because Brianna likes to go there to cry. And from there, they develop a little bit of a pen palship, clear the air, and eventually we turn it into a fake dating situation. I gave this book 4 stars. I thought that this was really exceptional in terms of mental health representation. I will warn you, if you have anxiety, this may be cathartic if you're in a good spot, but if you're kind of in the thick of it, this might be triggering, so just know that going in. I just loved that the pining was kind of going on because they set some rules with the fake dating that they're like, here's the setup, and so they didn't want to admit the feelings for one another, and I thought that they both had a really equal opportunity to show up for one another because based on the description, you can tell that Jacob has some anxiety issues, and so Brianna helps and supports him through that, and Brianna has some relationship issues, and Jacob just shows up and helps her through those circumstances. And I loved the balance of that relationship, and neither of them really saw either of those situations as burdensome. It just was simply part of who that person was, and so they lovingly showed up for them in those ways. I really enjoyed this book, 4 stars. On to a slight bit of a disappointment. Meet Your Match by Candy Steiner. This is the first in a new hockey series. This was released within like the past month. So the plot of this, Maven is doing a 24/7 access piece on Vince Tanev, who is the rookie hotshot for the Tampa hockey team, and she's gonna follow him around for a month. The only problem is that they don't get along. They don't like each other very much. They had a run-in at a gala, and they kind of got off on the wrong foot. So Maven's really not excited about this situation, and things kind of evolve from there. So we've got some forced proximity, which is fun. You know, you've got your hockey, a little bit of enemies to lovers. So I will say I enjoyed this book when I was actually in it and reading it, but when I would set it down, I just found myself kind of going, all of this feels a little bit forced. A lot of the plot, the enemies to lovers, just felt like it was only serving to set the plot up, and it didn't feel like real circumstances. So even Maven being part of like a social media team that's doing a 24/7 access piece, like hockey teams have their own social media team. She never meets with them. So I was kind of like, well, that's interesting. Well, also, why do they need her in order to accomplish that? For a month just seems like a lot of time. I've seen similar stuff like this actually play out on social media, and usually it's for like 24 hours or it's for a week. It's for a much shorter time period. So the month timeline felt weird. The enemies to lover situation did not need to be in here. The forced proximity of the setup alone should have been enough. There was a lot of stuff where I was kind of like, but I liked the relationship. When they were together, it was very steamy and fun. So I enjoyed that part. I didn't like Maven all that much. She was kind of bratty and she read pretty immature, which was a little frustrating because she's supposed to be like new adult age, and she felt like she had kind of cornered the market on like being multifaceted, and anyone with money just couldn't possibly be that way. She's the worst, I would say, honestly, in the first like scene or the first chapter, and then after that it gets a little bit better, and Vince does call her out, so I felt like it wasn't horrible.
All right, so since I already have to do a bunch of other voiceovers, I thought that I would add that the term boomer bunny is used when referring to puck bunnies. Boomer refers to the bar that they hang out at, but it did make me think of grandmas in bodycon dresses. So I pass that information along to you for your entertainment.
So I give it 3.5 stars for those reasons. Moving on to Minx by Sophie Lark. So this is about Ramses, who is a self-made billionaire that's used to getting what he wants out of life, and he's decided that he wants Blake, who is a high-end escort that uses her position in order to learn information about the stock market and use it to her advantage. So when Ramses kind of sets his sight on her, they come up with a very specific relationship, and that ends up bleeding into their real life more and more. So I'll say that there is a heavy element of pet play right at the beginning. I didn't super love that, not my thing, so I kind of skipped over those parts. It does get a lot better towards like the middle and end of the book. So the relationship is kind of goofy because she's an escort. We're introducing the sexual elements like right up front, and then we figure out that they have some similarities and do some character work and development and relationship building. So it feels a little weird because of that. It doesn't flow like a normal romance, which wasn't a bad thing. It was just something to note. I will say I didn't love Ramses. He rubbed me the wrong way. He pushed boundaries all the time, and really up until the last couple of scenes, I wasn't a big fan of his. And he really redeemed himself in those last couple of scenes.
Editing me popping in really fast here. So one thing that I'll just elaborate on in terms of Ramses' character, he's very obsessed with appearances and material things for a very long time during the book, which just made the relationship feel a bit shallow. With the relationship in general, they're both really interested in stocks, and truly I couldn't give less of a fuck about those sections, so it kind of made those sections boring. But I really loved Blake, and I thought she was a really fascinating character because she was scrappy, so that's where I kind of landed with that one. All right, back to my typical BS. Here you go.
So for those reasons, I'm giving it 3.5 stars. Again, I enjoyed it while I was reading it, but it's not something that I would revisit, and it's not something that I'm like, everyone should pick up. I'm gonna center myself. Now for a book that made me really mad. Backstage Pass by Olivia Cunning. I'm going to glaze over this plot. A band ends up running into a professor that studies or teaches human sexuality, and they start hooking up, and I guess she goes on tour at some point. I don't know. I didn't get to that part. I DNF'd at 25%. 0 stars. This book made me mad. It uses the R slur, so I'm not gonna put up with that. It uses it not once, but multiple times. It uses words like spaz, and even if I could look past that, the plot was bad. It was not good. It's insta love, it's insta spice. There's not really a good connection established between the characters. There's not even a good plot established even at the 25% mark where I left off. The spice, even if you're going into it for that, it's not good. The spice was very like clinical sounding. This action and then this action, not about like feeling and sensation. So it had a very like unsexy feel. It felt very much like more of like a description of locking than it did of like sensuality. So I was just kind of like, this is awful on so many levels that I don't need to put up with this. 0 stars, DNF. All right, on to The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. So the plot of this, Allie has a one-night stand and she decides that she's hit rock bottom. So from there, she revamps her life entirely. And part of that is getting on a dating app where she runs into the guy that she had the one-night stand with. They establish that they're not into each other, so they're going to kind of be support systems for one another while they're going through the dating process because it's been so awful for both of them. So they go on their dates and then they meet up for tacos afterwards. That's the long and short of it. I give this 3 stars. I don't think that this was particularly like bad by any stretch. I've read almost this exact same book before. The banter was very not great. I don't think Lynn Painter and I have the same humor. The characters would be like, oh, tee, isn't he so funny? And I was like, apparently my husband and I are fucking comedians. This is very crummy banter. It was really not that funny. It was just one of those that I was like, ooh, this is like not really doing it for me. So 3 stars, it's fine, moving along. Oh God, they just keep getting worse. All right, I'm gonna fortify my energy. All right. The Billionaire by Marnie Mann. So this is like an age gap romance that takes place in Vegas. Joe and Jenner meet at a sports bar, I think, in Vegas. They hit it off pretty immediately and they start banging and they're buddies for the week while they're in Vegas together. They live on opposite coasts, so they know their time's coming to an end. This was just like way too spice heavy. It wasn't that innovative in the spice department either. The plot and the forbidden elements of this were kind of contrived, and I just didn't really understand why these two liked each other. Jenner's whole personality is being a billionaire and buying her stuff, and Joe's whole thing is like, she's so different than any other girl I've met before. And I'm like, yeah, you and every other bitch in a billionaire romance. I was like, this isn't innovative, this isn't interesting, the spice is just okay, there was no plot, moving on. It was fine. It was 3 stars. Goodbye. Oh my God. Okay, this next one was a huge disappointment. I'm going to tell you this plot and you're gonna be like, Perrin, that sounds so good. I was so excited for this book. Oh, I was so sad when I was just kind of like, okay. So we have Cassie. She used to have an OnlyFans account and she protected her identity, but she sort of fell for someone while she was doing OnlyFans, and so she closed down the account. She's since moved on. She's in college and she is working at a children's hospital, but they lost funding and she has now lost that job. So she's in the market for a new position. She finds a well-paying nanny gig, and that is with Aiden. He's a chef and obviously he's a single parent. She ends up finding out that Aiden was one of her biggest clients when she had her OnlyFans account, but because she protected her identity, he doesn't recognize her, so she's having to figure out how to come clean. Oh, I came across it on Goodreads and I was like, that just sounds like such a fun setup, unique, it's modern. I was stoked. You've got forced proximity because she's nannying and living with them. This book was the most okayest, most vanilla book I've read in a long time. And this is out of like a month of vanilla books. This one particularly stands out. Cassie's whole personality is like, I'm really good with kids and I just have the magical touch and know how to like talk with them. But also I'm so awkward. And she did that like stupid rom-com thing where they like space out because they're like, oh my God, so much hotness. And they like lose track of time. It's like, no one does that. First off, I hate that as like a mechanism of trying to build attraction because I just don't think it's that effective. Let's find some things that they like to do together. Aiden was pretty vanilla as well. And they just didn't spend a ton of time interacting because she's there during the day, he's working nights. It just didn't lend itself to them them spending a lot of time together and getting to know each other. The banter was decent, so it was a 3-star for me, but I'm thinking about dropping it to a 2 because I was so disappointed with how just like blah it ended up being. So we'll see. Moving along. Written by Catherine Moon. So I picked this one up on a total whim. It's like paranormal fantasy romance with a why choose element. Well, I say why choose, but it's polyamorous. So Joanna's a new librarian at a magical school. She has like just this amount of magic where she's able to go to this university and work there, but not enough magic that she can actually like go to school there. So she's very excited about her new position. She ends up catching the eye of 3 different professors who are looking to complete their covens, looking for their 4th. The only problem is Joanna isn't magical enough to be part of this witch coven. Or is she? And at the same time, they're dealing with something dark and spooky lurking around campus. The thing that I really enjoyed about this book is that it was polyamorous. It's not just everyone loving on Joanna. We've got multiple relationships going on within this group of 4 people. I really liked the world. I liked that we were in a library on a university campus, but the feeling of it and like the atmosphere of this place was really cool. Actually, the element I cared the least about was the relationships, which as a romance reader is like sacrilege to say, I think. But I really enjoyed all the other elements, and I would continue on with this series. I think it's the first in a series of 4. I would continue on, but not for the relationships. Honestly, I would go for the plot. I don't know what to tell you. I gave it 3.5 stars because it was just like a little bit too short. I wanted a little bit more to the world, but I would absolutely continue on with this series. All right, next up, Antihero by Sarah Kate. So we have like an age gap, fake dating, fake relationship, and some very intense opposites attract. So Adam has grown up in the shadow of his father, who is a pastor for a mega church. His sermons are like broadcast on TV, and Adam dreams of following in his father's footsteps and eventually taking over this church. Unfortunately, Adam finds out that his father is not all he seems to be. He actually owns a sex club, and Adam catches him there with another woman that's not his wife. So that sex club is actually owned partially by Sage. She is this pink-haired, tattooed gal. So Sage runs this sex club with her boyfriend, and things really come to a head for both her and for Adam when Adam confronts his father at this sex club. Sage doesn't like how the club is being run. Adam decides he wants to take down his father. Sage wants to make her now ex-boyfriend jealous. So they decide that they are going to make some fake spicy tapes and release them with the hopes that it will make the ex jealous and it will ruin Adam's father's reputation. There's also like a fake dating element that's like sprinkled in. So I give this 4.5 stars. I'm really happy I finally found a Sarah Kate that I like. I always love the descriptions that she has out about her books. They always sound so interesting, and then I'll read them and I get about like 40 to 50% in and I'm like, oh no, I feel like this book's kind of getting away from me, or this just wasn't what I was expecting, or I don't feel like there's enough development. And I felt like this really just hit the mark because the focus of this is really around religious deconstruction and around like accepting sexual desire and around like not passing judgment on other people. For me, as someone who's gone through some religious deconstruction, this really spoke to me because of those elements. The focus is really on, does this hold true, or is this just something that some other person really made up and told me is good or bad? And what does that actually look like in my life? And so I really liked those elements. I just felt like they could have been taken a step further for 2 reasons. So Adam felt like he had already done a fair amount of deconstruction that didn't really feel like it was acknowledged. He was swearing using the Lord's name in vain, which if you're really religious, you typically do not do, let alone swear at all. He also had some casual sex prior to this, which again, with Christianity and purity culture, that's like a big no-no. So, you know, I felt like those things kind of went a little unacknowledged. And then the other part was with the family. The family was not as religious as I would have expected for a pastor's family. I've spent a fair amount of time around pastors' families before, and typically there's a lot of prayer, there's a lot of quoting of scripture, there's a lot of turn to Jesus, and I just felt like that element was missing a little bit with the mom, but especially with the dad. I really expected him to like weaponize scripture a little bit more or prey on Adam's like confusion during the deconstruction process. So I felt like those elements could have been taken a little bit farther, but that's me being really nitpicky and someone that's been in the thick of it. I want to reread this book, frankly. frankly, and it makes me want to like look at other books that explore elements of like religious deconstruction, because I had such a good time with this, and this was really cathartic for me. All right, last one. The Sinner and the Scholar by Lena Paherchik. I had wanted to read this back in June and didn't get around to it, so I finally got to that one, so I was happy about that. The plot of this is there's like a group of like religious adjacent women who are assassins. They use their bodies and their like fighting skills to take out really bad men. Recently, they've been found out by the Vatican, so they are being forced to combine with the saints, who more or less do the same thing but are their male counterparts. But everyone's got their own motives in this situation. There's more and more demons coming up, so really these two groups have to team up and find a way to fight evil with each other. So this book is kind of hard to recommend because I felt like there was a lot of plotting and pacing issues that really distracted from the book. The first, I would say, roughly about a third of the book felt very well structured and well paced, and then some point after that it really started to fall apart. There was times where it felt like more information should have been given, or I was left kind of with a gap in my knowledge. Just like a prime example is like there's this group called the Seven Deadly Sins that are introduced. I don't know what they do. I know that one of the guys is a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. They represent the seven deadly sins, and one of them has a bionic arm, but I don't know what they do. I don't know who they are. I don't know what they do in relationship to like what the saints and sinners are doing. There was a lot of stuff where I just felt like I just didn't have enough knowledge. The action sequences are very fun, and this book is very action-packed, so I did like that aspect of things, but the plotting and pacing issues really just became distracting because there were so many times where I was like, wait, what? And felt myself like flipping back, seeing if I had like missed something, or if that information like hadn't been given to me yet. So I think that those confusing elements make it a little bit hard to recommend. I rated this a lot on potential because it had a lot of really great commentary on the sexism and patriarchal nature of like the Catholic Church. So I liked that commentary. I thought it was interesting. And also she's kind of going through her own deconstruction a little bit.
And you might be asking yourself at this point, who the heck is she? She is Thea. Thea and Wesley have a romance that spans this book as well, and I completely forgot to mention it. So sorry, back to the normal content.
Of like, am I a bad person because I am doing all these bad things in the name of making the world better, but is that enough? So I'm rating it 3 stars based on the potential of this book, but just know that there's a lot of plotting and pacing issues. I know I keep saying that, but I really want to like warn people if you're interested in this book that there's some issues. All right, that's it, folks. We made it, and I still have some energy. It's a good thing I went and took a nap. With that, let me know how you think I should rate Fourth Wing. I'm still really torn. Part of me is like, it's a 1 star. There's a part of me that's like, it's not that bad. It's just not my taste. So I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are. And don't forget to like this video if you like it, and subscribe if you want more content from me. And with that, I hope to see you on my next video. Bye-bye.